Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to Laugh and Learn Human Design, the Centers, Part 3. And I am joined by Jennifer, My Holistic Self Counselling, My Holistic Self, because I realized I had like 2 cards for you. So, anyhow, thank you for being here. I am Tarot Stash. And this is for entertainment purposes only. Please do not make any decisions based upon what we say. Seek professional assistance. Really. Do all of the YouTube things. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe this video to our channels. And this video, all of the channels are linked. Now I'm going to take a breath.
Take a sip.
My goodness. Jennifer, how are you?
Doing well. Doing well.
Yes.
Well, doing all the stuff.
That is a little bit what happens, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We have a tendency to do all of the stuff. And speaking of all of the stuff, we have been talking about human design.
Yeah.
And it's been great. And it's been so great. We're going to be doing part 3 of the centers.
We are.
So this is wonderful. There is a playlist, which is linked below. This is also a part of the Laugh and Learn series, but it's, I made a human design class playlist. So there you go.
Very cool.
So yeah, and let's see if some of the best chatters are here. I believe they are.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, Kaylee Fogo Pogo is here. Hello.
Hello, hello.
And Kaylee was just on a live, her first live ever Sunday.
How exciting!
Yes, it was over at Heather Soul Alchemy with it's Heather's channel. I'm like, oh my gosh. And Book is here. Hello, Book. Thank you. Oh, look at that, Magician of the Stars. Teresa, hey, Darian is here. Good to see you. And yep, much love to us. And I just realized my outfit today matches Jen and her background, wearing burgundy and green.
Oh, hey.
Sounds perfect.
It works.
And Vicky Howell is here. Hello. Good to see you, Vicky. Thank you. Oh, yes. It's Indigo Jaguar. Oh, my gosh. I was like going, I couldn't. I have her on my channel on Thursday. We're doing a conversation about this book and the deck associated with it, if you get it exclusively from Barnes & Noble.
Oh, cool.
But yeah. So, human design.
Yeah. So because we have 3 to get through and we had 2 last time, unless we end up going to a 4th, which is totally possible. We'll go with the pace that we need to go.
Mm-hmm.
But we won't spend a whole lot of time going back over things because Harold has that playlist. There's also one on my website that's in not chronological order, but in the order that you should watch them in. Yes. Yeah, so we can kind of dive right in. I guess to start, if anybody doesn't have their body graph yet, maybe I can ask Gerald to put it in there because I'm not so good with the whole chat side of things. But the link for my site, you can go on there. You can go on Genetic Matrix, and you can get your graph right away.
Yes.
So then you can, exactly, that's the graph, and then you'll be able to look at it. So when we talk about, you know, what's going on in the chart, you can look at yours and say, oh, that resonates. Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah. And for those of you who want to be overachievers, you can purchase this book, which I have been referencing. And you can get, you can have access and see the chart that looks like that. So Joanne Mayhew is here. Hi, Joanne.
Hello, hello.
So in our part one, oh good Lord, in part one for the centers, I think we did a whole lot of them. So we did.
I think we went through the first 4 up there.
We did.
Yes, we did the head, the ajna, the throat, and the G, or the identity center.
Yep. And then we did the heart center and solar plexus last time.
You got it. Exactly. So
there we go. So, all right, I will let you. I'm going to take a back seat. I'm just going to be the guy behind the curtain. So.
Well, hopefully we see you too. The curtain doesn't have to be up the whole time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've got 3. I pull mine out. We've got 3 left to look at. So we've got the sacral, we've got the spleen, and we've got the root. So those are going to be the 3 that we hopefully get through today. And if we don't, then we'll do another one.
There you go.
Down the road.
And I just want, one of the reasons that we're spending so much time on this, human design is a great way to understand what your natural affinity is with engaging with the world.
That's a beautiful way of putting it.
So, things are neither right nor wrong. They just are. And when we understand who we are and our natural tendencies, then we have this wonderful ability to lean into our strengths and spend time improving on where our strengths do not lie. So.
Well, and understanding too, the things that come up for us. I think so often when we talk about shadow work, a lot of people get into the idea of, I have to overcome my shadow. And the reality is we have to learn to embrace our shadow.
Yes.
Right? We have to recognize that these are aspects of our lives that are going to continue to present learning opportunities for us. Right? Yes. And that's a beautiful thing. So if we're constantly trying to get rid of, then we're missing the beauty and the unfoldment that can happen by embracing this and saying, hey, you know what? Every time this comes up for me, I have another opportunity.
Yes, that is well said. That's well said. Moira has come in, and Millie de la Prida. So listening in the background, I understand.
Awesome.
And Michelle Marie is here. Hello.
Hi, Michelle.
You, and hi to Jonathan.
Wonderful.
All right. So.
Yeah. So just as a quick overview, Gerald, if you want to hold your chart up again, just because this will be an important piece. So if you notice on Gerald's chart, some of those centers are colored in. When they are colored in, that means it's a defined center. So this is just a quick review. We've gone over this in some of the other ones. If you want some more detail, the ones that are not colored in, if they have a gate in them, so these little red circles with the numbers in them and the lines coming out of them, those are all of the different gates or transits that we go through. If we have one of those, we're just considered undefined. And for instance, his heart center, which is also the will or ego center, is that little red triangle there. As you can see, all of those numbers are open. There's no highlighted circle there. That means that none of those are activated for him. That's an open center. So we use open and undefined oftentimes interchangeably, but that is the difference. So when you're looking at your chart, you'll be able to say, if I'm saying, hey, this gate, when it's defined, this is kind of some of the things that show up for it. You'll know if you're defined or not, so I just wanted to go over.
Beautiful. Well done.
Over that.
Well done.
All right. So, like I said, we've got 3 more to go through. So, let's start with the spleen. So, we ended with the solar plexus, which is that triangle on the black line of transits. So, we're going to just switch over to the triangle on the opposite end. So, it's the mirrored one there. That's the spleen on the red side with the transit, so on the design side.
Yes.
All right. So, spleen. It's interesting, right? We talk about the correlation between the chakras and things like that. And this is, really interesting because even though this hasn't been incorporated necessarily in the 7 chakras, this is one of our oldest awareness centers.
Okay.
Okay. The spleen is very intuitive, it's instinctual. This is really about our body consciousness. So there's health related to this, there's fears related to this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a survival awareness center.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So when we look at, okay, what are the things that the spleen does for us? We really are going to look at its impact on our intuition and the fears that come up for us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our ability to be aware or our lack of awareness around our own health and what we need
Mm-hmm.
in order to be healthy. And this is really a tribal energy. So we didn't talk about circuits or anything like that before.
Nope.
But this is a real tribal energy. So it's got a lot of primal awareness related to it.
Okay.
Okay. So when we talk about, even the nervous system, which we've kind of tapped into before, this is that fight, flight, freeze kind of, right? What am I going to do in this moment? How am I going to survive?
Sure.
Right. And so, as we look at that, it's connected to our lymphatic and our immune system, which, is, of course, it's going to be because this is about, whether or not we're safe. And so the immune system is also very much in that place of fighting against, right?
Sure.
And so that's that kind of correlation there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
You mind if I put us close?
I don't mind at all.
Because if I'm going to show this, then it shows up easier.
Oh, way better. Definitely. So the other piece to this, guys, as we're going through, feel free to ask questions. So if you have your chart and I say something and you want to know like what that means, definitely put it out there. And I'm going to ask questions too. And so I'd love to have, those responses
Yes,
as we go
please.
through.
Yes, please. So I
Um,
think one of the things about this the spleen is biologically it's very important.
yeah.
So and also biologically it probably hasn't changed much.
No. And that's the piece, right? Is it is our oldest awareness center and it really is that primal awareness. And it hasn't moved from that,
Right.
right?
Yes. Hmm.
It's interesting because the trigram for this is wind, right? And it's that idea of, knowing in the air, right? That subtle shift
Yes.
in the air and you just go, "Ooh, I know." Right? And it's
Yes.
it's that it's that intense and that deep and I have goosebumps as I talk about it. Spleen is is my authority. So spleen and I are very, very tight.
Okay.
um, and so when these different centers show up as our authority, there is an affinity there that we can hone in on if we allow ourselves to.
Hmm.
So on the shadow side, the spleen is alarm. It's on high alert, right? And as a repressive nature to that, we can kind of go into that hypochondria place, right? Where we're constantly in sympathetic activation. And so there's constant state of fear, right? Fight, flight. What's happening right now is that everything is triggering us,
Oh, okay.
right? Because at high alert, we're constantly looking for like, am I safe? Am I safe? What's going to happen? What's going to, right?
Yes.
When is something going to go wrong? Right. And then on the reactive side is there's this recklessness. So this is where our alarm system goes out the window, right? And there's no warnings. This is that invincible place,
Hmm.
right? Where we're like, I can do anything and nothing's going to touch me.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can see how both sides here are things that we can fall into. And so noticing our own patterns, right? Are we constantly in an activated state, or are we constantly taking risks that are beyond, the normal kind of, let's
Yes.
get that adrenaline going.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
And so just again, notice it, right? Notice how that shows up for you in your experience. And see, okay, how do I take this energy and move it from this place of alarm into the gift of alertness? Right? And so this gift is really interesting because it's the ability to be alert about our surroundings and what's happening and what's coming to us, and this kind of connection with our intuition, right? That sixth sense that comes in.
Yeah. Yes.
um, but without being reactive to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, we talk about this idea of listening to our inner wisdom, and that's a lot to do with the spleen. So, it's really interesting with the spleen is, how do they put it? They say it talks softly and it only speaks once.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. And so it's those intuitive hits that you get, right? But then the mind jumps in.
Uh-huh.
Right. So,
Yeah.
how many times have you had this experience where, you're about to do something and you go, oh, I really shouldn't do that. And the mind goes, yeah, but.
You go
And
ahead
you
and
go
do it.
ahead and do it.
Yep.
And then you go, that's why I shouldn't have done this.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yes. Yep.
Right?
Oh,
That
yeah.
very soft kind of no that the mind can often overpower, that's the spleen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I like that. It speaks softly and only once.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right? And so when we talk about, as an authority, for those who have the splenic authority, there is so much power in quieting the mind and doing those meditative practices and really working on noticing that difference, right? Between that subtle voice and the mind that just goes on and on and on.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Right. And when we're able to cultivate that, we can move into the siddhi for this, which is presence, right? Embodied awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And how
Yes.
beautiful to be able to tap into that place of true knowing right here, right now,
Yeah.
if something is safe for us or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, I think I like that way is thinking about this as alertness.
Mm-hmm.
That feels doable
Yeah.
and less stressful. So,
Yeah. Well, I
cool.
mean, when you think about it, you talk about stress and all with this alertness, right? And alertness being the gift. And it's such an interesting thing, right? Because we can get carried away in our fears,
Mhm.
right? The mind has a beautiful ability to just run wild.
It does. Yes.
Right? And to take something that, is a fear. Maybe it's a fear because of past trauma. Maybe it's a fear because of, something that we witnessed, or it's a fear because of, shows that we watch. I mean, there's so many different things that can
Sure.
play into where a fear comes from. And what happens is the spleen, it just gives that warning, right? But the mind makes all the stories,
Ah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
right? And so where the spleen is just going, hey, pay attention, right? The
Mm-hmm.
mind can then take that and really run with it. And so each of the gates in the spleen, and we won't get into all of those specifically, but they talk about different fears that can come up for us.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so when we have different gates activated, we might find that we filter our fears through those particular gates.
Sure.
Right. And so, again, this piece of being aware of what that means for us can really help us recognize patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we are pattern oriented.
Hmm. Yeah. And so our ability to notice that is going to really help us. So on the defined side of spleen, there's a good sense of security and awareness, right? Somebody who has it defined um, generally can know what's good for them, what isn't, right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
My partner will ask me if I want something, and I'll know, no, mm-mm. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily know why or what makes it okay or not okay in that moment. It's just no.
Yes.
No, thanks anyway. Um, right? And so there is that piece of being able to really like tap into a knowing of what we need in our moment, what we need to hold on to, what we need to let go of and move from.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the undefined spleen sometimes has trouble with that,
Ah, okay.
right? So there's an inconsistent, now it doesn't mean that you don't know, it's just that there's an inconsistent felt sense of intuition,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a lack of consistency when it comes to physical well-being and immunity. So when you think about, okay, what does that mean, right? Have you ever had those experiences where you're like, you know, I there had this experience and I just knew, and then now it's not really clear,
Yes.
right? And I'm not getting that same kind of answer.
Uh-huh.
That's okay. It's not defined, right? You have a different authority that's there to help you make decisions,
Yes.
right? And so this is just not the way that you're meant to make decisions. So somebody who is undefined has to really work on avoiding too much spontaneity, right?
Uh-huh.
Necessarily know in the now
Mm-hmm.
if
Yes.
something is correct or not, right? And so, taking that that time um, and really using your strategy and authority. So your strategy, again, just to recap, is based on your aura type. So, generator needs to respond, and that includes manifesting generators. Projectors need to wait for the invitation.
Mhm.
Manifestors, they just need to inform and go for it, right? And then reflectors have to wait that lunar cycle.
Uh-huh.
And these are for big decisions, guys, right? Like it's
Sure.
not, I mean, we can use this about, simple things, but we're really talking about big life decisions for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then our authorities, right? Which we haven't actually done a show on, and maybe that would be worth doing at some point too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so noticing, if you're undefined and you're trying to really rely on that intuitive hit all of the time, that's not necessarily where you're going to get your information from,
Ah, okay.
right?
Because sometimes you do need to understand why you've made that decision shortly afterwards, or sometimes a long time afterwards. At
Mm-hmm.
least I do, because then I can trust that intuition and I can build a rapport with it.
Yeah. So let's go back. Last week, we talked about the solar plexus. And the solar plexus is if we talk about like the hierarchy of authorities,
Uh-huh.
the solar plexus is the top one. If you have that defined, that will be your authority.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's the emotional one where you have to weight the emotional wave.
Yes.
Now, let's say you also have the spleen defined. Okay. There is a sense of knowing in the now, but only after you've ridden the emotional wave.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. So this is where people might, say, well, I have a defined spleen, so I just know. But they're in this emotional high and they're going, yeah, let's do this. They haven't ridden that wave yet. That clarity hasn't come.
Uh-huh.
So that spleen hasn't actually kicked in yet. Right. So this is the other piece too about looking at the chart as a whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really understanding the dynamics of how these different centers work together.
Yes. I think I think it's one of those things that I'm being very careful not to get overwhelmed with all of this information. I'm just taking small bites
Hmm.
and I'm chewing on them for a while, and that's why I went ahead and I got the book, because I'm looking, I wonder what that means.
Hmm.
So, but yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, everybody who's watching, if you have your chart, are you defined? Are you undefined?
So I am undefined, correct?
You are undefined. You got it.
So, and you are defined?
I am.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Does
Yeah.
anyone have their chart out of
Yeah.
curiosity? And links are in the description of where you can do that if you are so interested.
Mm-hmm.
Kaylee said undefined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
And Millie doesn't have a chart. So if you want to get yours, you can click on the link and pull one up right away if you want to have it here, or if you want to get it later and come back and watch, that works too.
yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I am going to be putting that in, and it's the free human design body graph that you're talking about, correct?
Yeah,
That's really
if
quick.
they want the mini guide, that'll have to come later, but if they want to just go in and get their free chart, that they can
Yep.
do right away.
Yep. There is the link, school pickup time. I understand, Millie. You've got your priorities right. So,
There you go.
so yeah.
Yeah. So, with the spleen, some of the things to think about, right? So the shadow side of a defined spleen is believing that you're invulnerable, right? Like nothing's going to touch me,
Sure.
or holding on to bad habits, which just overload the system,
Hmm.
right? And so this idea of making decisions with the mind, that's what brings us into this place of overload, right? So not trusting that gut response, ignoring that intuition, right?
Uh-huh.
And just using the mind, that's kind of those shadow aspects of a defined spleen.
Hmm.
On the undefined side, again, it's still holding on to things, habits, beliefs, relationships, all of that aren't good for you.
Hmm.
And feeling fear and insecurity, that is a normal kind of thing when we have an undefined spleen.
Uh-huh.
And so when we recognize that, that ability to go, okay, this fear that I have that comes up for me is part of my design,
Yes.
right? Now, all of a sudden, instead of trying to get rid of all of our fear, we can look at it and go, okay, what is my fear trying to tell me?
Yes, it flips.
Hmm.
Yes. Hmm.
Right?
What is my fear trying to tell me? Okay.
Hmm. And so these are the kind of things that when you think about, you know, changing our attitude around the shadow, we get to this place of not wanting to push it away, but really kind of embracing it and going, okay, what do I need to do with this?
Uh-huh.
Right. And then the other side of it for an undefined is also spontaneity that can lead to bad decisions. So anybody who's undefined, I got to ask, right? Have you had an experience where in the moment somebody said something you didn't really know, but you were like, heck with it. You went ahead and went,
That wasn't the best decision I've ever made.
not the
Yes,
best,
yes, yes,
right?
yes.
And so, when you have, you know, a, that spleen undefined, it's really important that you go back to that strategy and authority for that decision making,
Hmm.
right?
That is so true.
Hmm. Some not self themes that come up. So with a defined spleen, you really want to make sure that you're not ignoring your instincts. That you're not ignoring those impulses that come in the moment, and allowing your mind or even other people's minds, or emotions or opinions to overwhelm the instinct, right? That
Yes.
definition really needs to be honored.
Hmm.
Okay. And for the undefined, it's again knowing what to fear, you know, with these kind of totally open centers, and knowing what you can let go of, right? Being able to recognize when that fear or insecurity is taking over.
Hmm.
How can you bring in some flexibility and discernment to help you really navigate that?
Yes.
All right. And then
Yes.
also holding on to things that aren't good for you.
Mm.
Right.
I've never done that. Sorry. Mm. So,
Yeah. Well,
wow.
and again, it's that piece, right? Of not necessarily knowing, or part of you kind of has an inkling of this might not be the best thing for me right now. But there is a fear, right? That fear and insecurity are so
Mhm.
intense that we often get into this place of paralyzation because of the fear,
Yes.
right? And
Mhm.
so the idea of letting go and moving into something that's unknown is horribly scary,
Yes.
right? So, a question here is really, am I holding on to something that's not good for me,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And how do I allow space for that? And you know that you're moving into or having space for this if you're undefined, when you're able to feel comfortable taking time, right? To make
Yes.
decisions or to see what life brings you.
Uh-huh.
When you're really focusing on your strategy and authority to make those decisions and not acting out of fear or insecurity.
Mhm.
And you're going to be more comfortable with your health, right? And
Yeah.
taking care of your body.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Michelle said, "I have my chart open, but I don't know what to ask."
All good.
Hey, that's okay.
That is okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and, Laura is the same way, and, Heather and Viviani have come in, so it's great to see both of you and all of you who are watching. So,
mhm. All right. Well, I mean, let's move on then from the spleen and
okay.
move to the sacral. So that's the square in the middle there. There you
Right
go.
there,
So a
yeah.
defined one, an undefined one.
Mhm. And so I am
Undefined.
undefined. Remind me again why, because I am
There's no channels. So if you look at go up to your throat and your ajna, you see how there's those lines in between. And there's one line that goes and it connects the two,
okay.
right? That's
Yes.
a channel. So when you
Okay.
have a channel between two centers, it activates the center, it becomes defined.
Okay. So I do not have any of those.
Right. So there's no channels. You've got some
Okay.
gates activated, but you've got no channels.
And these are the gates.
All the numbers in there
All the numbers, and when it's
represent a
red,
gate.
it's activated. Got it.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. So all the numbers that you have there that have a black or red line coming out of them, you're going to see in that black or red column going down the sides.
Okay.
So you'll see what planet they're in. You're going to see what line is associated with them.
Wow.
Things that we can get into in a whole other show.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah. So, congratulations on having
I was just going.
electricity. That's
Electricity
wonderful.
is a wonderful thing, isn't it, Heather? Wow.
Just in time for us to get to the powerhouse center.
Oh, we did not plan that. So
No,
that's the
that is the
sacral center.
sacral center.
Hmm.
So now for generators, manifesting generators, that sacral is defined. So that means 70%, give or take, of the population in the world have that defined.
Yes. Okay. I am not part of that 70%.
No, neither am I. But this is the sacral, right? This is your life force energy. This is creativity. This is desire. This is sexuality. This is the function. It functions as the generative energy to bring that vitality into your experience.
Hmm.
All right. And it's that capacity for you to sustain whatever it is you need to be doing.
Yes. Hmm.
Okay. So what happens here is if you're defined, you're going to have consistent access to that. Right. Remember the old
Oh,
Energizer bunny just keeps going and going and
yes.
going. Right.
Yes.
If I'm dating myself, I don't know, but
No, I
um,
completely understand that. Yes.
right. Um, and so, yeah, whereas if it's undefined, there's an inconsistent access to that energy. Now, it doesn't
Hmm.
mean that those of us who don't have it defined have no energy. It just means that we have to be more mindful of how we use it because we don't have consistent access to it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Hmm.
So this is our main motor center. And this center on the shadow side is all about reaction, right? So we just talked about the spleen and fear. And these reactions for the sacral are also kind of based in fear,
Okay.
right? So from a repressive standpoint, we're looking at resistance.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't even want to go there, right?
Yes.
Fear and
Yes.
resistance to following the life force energy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas on the reactive side, there's this kind of projecting the fear outward, right? So we move from this resistance and holding it in to shutting down the life force of others and being like, nope, get out of here, go away. I don't want.
Well, I think that's really interesting because it's so in the sacral, it's not necessarily just about us. It's also really goes out and can impact others.
All of our centers can do that,
Okay.
right? Because they're
Very,
about how we relate in the world,
yes. Hmm.
right? And
Yes.
so when we look at, the sacral for sure, this is a huge one in the sense that, because it is, 70% of the population have this defined,
Hmm.
and they're feeding each other, right? In one way or another with
Yes.
that
Yes.
energy. And then for those of us who don't have it defined, we're constantly in this sacral dance with people who do have it defined, right? On how that energy is going to be used and shared and all of that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And so, this is really the energy that keeps the world going,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And the other piece to this is also an authority for a lot of people who have it defined, right? So if they don't have their solar plexus defined, this is the next one in that hierarchy.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I agree, Heather. Human design is so complex and fascinating. And Laura asked a question: does human design use the chakras at all?
Not officially, but there is that correspondence between them, right? So
Yes.
7 of the centers are also part of the chakras, right? But Ra talks about how we've moved from a 7 center being to a 9 center being,
Hmm.
right? And so we have, the G center and the spleen, which were added, right? And not to say that they're not there energetically anyway, right? But
Hmm.
now we're giving them more authority and more understanding in our experience.
So basically, what you're saying is humans are actually evolving. What? You heard it here first, people. You heard it here first. Yeah.
Can you believe
Sometimes I can't.
it?
Okay. Sometimes I can't. And sometimes I'm like going, oh, yeah, there we go. There's the evolution pains.
Hmm.
So,
Well, and that's the thing. And, each time we move into another evolution, another teaching and all comes to help us understand it. Right. And it builds on all of the others. Like, even if you think about human design, right, it builds on astrology, it builds on the I Ching, it builds on the Kabbalah, it builds on genetics, it builds on all of it. Right. And so, we begin to understand, like, okay, this is about, actually understanding ourselves on a whole new level.
mhm. Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. I did see that Michelle Marie posted, said, oh, I have a channel between 50 and 27 connected to Saturn, question mark.
I'd have to pull up your chart again. um,
But I think probably the symbol, the astrology symbol is
Yeah. So if you look down that, so the black side there is the personality side, and the red side is your design. So time of birth is the black one. The red is about 80 degrees prior to. So about 3 months before your birth, or 80 days, however that works out. And so somewhere in there, if you look at Saturn, you're going to see is 50 or 27 there connected to your Saturn on your chart.
very interesting. And I think that's one of those things that I think when you have layers of understanding and opportunity, you can put these things together to support.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, the other side to that too, now that you're actually talking about it. So, and I can give you this chart, Michelle, and I can actually give you the full astrology chart so you can really take a look at what it looks like in the human design piece. But in the wheel here, you can see there's each of the numbers for each of the gates all the way around, which are connected to the trigrams and the hexagrams there. And so what happens is each one of them, as you can see, is in a different sign, right? And so they're in. So when we look at how is human design connected to astrology, which this is not what today is about, but I'll just do a quick run with it. This is where it's all connected, right? So each part of our design down our personality and design sides are connected to transits and lines. And in there, each one of those are connected to the planets and the houses and the signs. So yeah, so we can take a look at it more if you really want to dive in, or we can even do a show at some point down the road with it. But yeah, to get into that right now would be adding a whole lot more than what today was.
Yep. So, but okay, so so we're talking about the sacral, and a lot of times this I hear a lot of attention being put on the sacral because it is a way, I'm not going to be able to articulate it. It's so important. It's basically, it's the core. When you look at the human body, it's one of the core, it's a core center. So
well, it's our vitality, so it's definitely going to have a lot of importance, right? And again, whether we have it defined or undefined, it's not that one is better or worse than the other. We all have it.
yes, we all have it.
Right?
Yes.
And so knowing though how it shows up for us in our experience, that's the important part.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And people might say, oh, like I want to activate my sacral energy and things like that. That's different than what we're talking about. In the sense that we all can activate, we can all connect to that energy. We just do it differently depending on what
Correct. Yes.
our design is.
Yes. And when we connect with the way that works for us, that's when we have the most genuine connection. It makes sense to us. It feels right.
Yeah.
So, and can one use, I always mispronounce that, sidereal astrology?
Yes. So in the genetic matrix, which is the system that I use to do all of my charting, you can pick if you want to use the tropical, if you want to use the sidereal, and then there's some others option wise as well.
And yes, the liner channel you addressed is black and red and connects to Saturn. 2.5. My 10 to 34 channel is also very strong. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
It is. This is why we keep coming back. So
it is fascinating stuff. And so it's really interesting too. Sorry, I'm going to get off track and I'm going to geek out about stuff that is not part of this show. But Michelle, we can have a conversation about the astrology side, or we can do a show about the astrology side with the human design, because holy moly, it's pretty incredible how they're connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Got that. Giving you props. So okay.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's go back for a geek out.
Yeah, it's the Geek Out Show.
It's not what you guys signed up for today.
We want to get through another center. So.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's dive in a little bit more to the sacral. All right. This is about providing that consistent source of energy, sex drive, ability for work output. It's like an unlimited generator that never runs out of gas.
Yes.
Right. That being said, somebody who has this defined, needs to run out of gas before they go to bed, right? So there is this kind of piece of you need to keep
Mhm.
going. You need to use up that energy, because if you don't, you're not going to get a good night's sleep.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. Whereas others who don't have that defined need to go to bed before they're tired.
Yes.
Right? Because they don't have that capacity to run the generator for as long.
Mhm.
So here, the strategy with a defined sacral: trust your life force energy, right? And trust how your life force responds. So this is where the sacral as an authority is really important. So the sacral is that kind of gut response. And generators and manifesting generators, you're here to respond to anything and everything. And
Uh-huh.
you're here to respond with this gut response that is going to go, hey, do you want to go do this thing? And that response is going to go, yeah, okay, I'm in. Right? And it's this like full on, yeah. Or it's going to go, no way,
Yep.
not interested.
Mhm.
Okay. Now here's the problem. How often in this world do we get a, oh yeah, I want to do that? And then the mind comes in.
Oh, all the
And
time.
it's like, oh, you don't really have time for that.
Right.
You can't fit that into your schedule. And is that really going to be the best use of your time right now?
Yes.
Right? And so we deny ourselves this thing that would really light us up and rejuvenate this life force energy within us.
Mhm.
Or on the other side of it, we get a, no way, do not want to do it. And the mind goes,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
really should do it. And right. And then we force ourselves to do this thing that is just sucking the life out of us.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Right.
yeah. Yeah, and well, yes. Yeah, and we gotta pay attention to that, and,
Mhm.
that's part of keeping the mind in check.
Yeah.
It's doing its job.
It's overdoing its job,
That's true.
right?
Yes.
The
Yes.
mind is here to help us. Again, it's here to help us get inspiration. It's here to help us, organize thoughts and things like that. It's here to help us, kind of, you know, think through different things. And if you have your authority, right, as a mental
Uh-huh.
authority, then you have to be able to think about it, process it through, express it, make sure that it's fully correct.
Yes.
But if that's not the case, and this is your authority, and you get these responses that are fully visceral, right? They're full body responses, and you deny that. And then you go, I'm burnt out, I'm exhausted, I can't function, there's no joy in my life. Stop, right? Take a
Mhm.
step back and go, what am I saying yes to that is a full on no for me? And what am I saying no to that I really would bring me joy?
Yes.
Right?
Say that again. I think that's a really important thing because therein lies a lot of struggles that I've had in my life. I'm doing things that I don't want to do, and I'm saying no to the things that would bring me a hell of a lot of joy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Say it again. Give it to me
but
again. Right? It's this idea that, ask yourself, what is it that you are saying yes to that no part of you wants to do? And what is it that you're saying no to that would absolutely light you up and bring you joy?
mm, yes. And that's where we need to put the mind in timeout to
Hmm.
be able to have these visceral responses.
Yeah. And this doesn't mean that we negate responsibility or things like that. Like there are things in our lives that as much as we don't like them, we're going to end up having to do them at some point.
Of course, yes,
Right?
yes,
But this is about, are you going through your entire day and you're only doing things that drain you and not making any space or time for things that energize you and light you up and
yes,
build that vitality back?
hmm,
Right? And
yes,
if you are constantly draining that battery, I mean, think about batteries, right? Like the phone battery is a fantastic example. right? We can drain the battery, but if we don't plug it back in and juice it back up,
Yep.
it's dead. It's no good to us.
It is absolutely no good to us, and nothing's going to help it.
Mm-mm.
Nothing's going to help it except plugging back in
Yeah.
and doing what is needed.
Yeah.
Nicely said.
And now here's the other piece to that, because we can plug in and we can get another little bit of power here and then unplug and keep going, and another little bit of power there and unplug and keep going. But that actually hurts our battery, right? We're supposed to plug back in and let it be,
Yes.
let
Yes.
it recharge, and then unplug, right? And keep
Yes.
going from there. So notice that too, right? If you're just kind of trying to fit a little bit of something in here and a little bit of something in there, how can you restructure so that you can actually honor yourself in a way that gives you time to really build that energy back?
Yes. That is so true. That phone is a really good analogy, because they talk about, if you want to maintain good battery health, don't let your battery go to a certain level, for entertainment
Mhm.
purposes only. I'm not a geek on that stuff. But you need to actually allow it to fully charge. None of this just, well, I'm just going to plug in for 10 minutes.
Mhm.
I'm just going to have a
I'm at
cup of,
20%. I'm good to go.
yeah, yeah. I'm just going to plug in, and I'm going to, I'm going to have an extra cup of coffee.
Mhm.
And, well, maybe not.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. So notice, right? Notice what decisions you're making and what you're allowing to make the decisions. Is it really that sacral response, or is it the mind jumping in, right?
Yes. Yes.
And then, there's this
Yep.
amazing. Yes, it is.
Yep.
Awesome. Um, yeah. And then being patient. And this is a hard one, right? Because we want things when we want them, how we want it, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
But when we're able to allow ourselves to be patient and do things that are meaningful for us, even when we feel stuck, we actually open to allowing the universe to give us things to respond to.
Okay.
Okay. So it's really important to not try to initiate or make things happen or push things. It doesn't mean that we don't plan for things, and it doesn't mean that we don't have goals and stuff like that, but it's about being ready the moment that this thing, whatever it is, comes to us, that we can respond to it and we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now I'm talking about generators and manifesting generators when it comes to response.
Mm-hmm.
For projectors like you and I, it's about the invitation and then we respond to that.
Yes.
Right? And so, I think that it is an important piece when we talk about the sacral and sacral energy, that we recognize if we're pushing in a way that's not honoring that energy.
Yes. Honor the energy. Honor the
Mhm.
energy that we have. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, and then on the undefined side, there's this inconsistency to it, right? It doesn't mean that we don't have it, but there's just an inconsistent access to that energy.
uh-huh.
And so for those of us who are undefined, we really have to set those boundaries and only commit to doing things in short bursts.
Yes.
So I don't know about you, but I know for myself, I will just get and this is my spleen coming into it too, but I'll just get oh, go do that. And I'll go and I'll have the energy for it and I'll get it done. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a break now. I need to stop for a bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's really about, honoring when you have those bursts and honoring when you don't.
Yes.
Right. And being willing to take that step back. And, it's funny because Ra talks about this idea of letting the sacrals do the heavy lifting. And it's funny, but there is a truth to it, right? Like I think about myself and my partner, and he's a manifesting generator, so generator energy, and he just goes and goes and goes. And I know as an undefined sacral that there were times where I was like, I feel like I have to just keep going. And
Yes.
I'm like, I don't have the capacity to keep up with that.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And he can putter all day and be very, very content. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I'm like, I'm gonna need a nap.
Yes. Oh, yes, yes. Well, yes, and therein lies the beauty and understanding, because when he knows you need that break, he's like, okay, you take your break. I'm
Mhm.
just going to keep going." And you can appreciate that he needs to keep going because that's his natural tendency.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Something, yeah. Um, Hypnicity said, "I'm taking a life coaching class, but not sure why I think I am life coach material."
Why wouldn't you be?
Thank you. I'm like, wait a minute. Why wouldn't you be? So I think,
If it's something that you're being called to, if it's something that came to you in your energy and you responded and went, yeah, this is good. If sacral is your thing, why not?
that's exactly right.
Right. So the question really is, with any of these kinds of big things, right? Like studying stuff and, relationships, moving, jobs, all of that kind of thing. It's really about following our strategy and authority,
Hmm.
right? So depending on what that is for you, I would double check and go, what is it, what is this for me, right? If I'm a projector, was I invited into this? Did somebody go, hey, you'd make an awesome coach? And there it is.
And because I don't have my life together, and I
Oh,
don't want a life coach person who has their life together, because then they're not talking from experience and they cannot relate to what I'm experiencing.
it's interesting, right? Like this idea of having our life together. What does that even mean?
Ooh, deep philosophical questions. Yes.
Right? What does that even mean? Now, here's the thing. We're going into the root center. I think this is a perfect kind of switch over into the root center.
Yes.
Because the
We'll
root
bring here
center,
to here.
yeah, so the bottom square there. So for those of you that have it defined, it's this one right here.
Yep.
Okay. So this is all about movement, pressure, adrenaline, drive, stress, another motor pressure center. And this one is all about our pressure to be, to evolve, to do, to complete, to adapt, right? So my question would be, is this coming from a pressure that you need to do something in order to feel good, in
Hmm.
order to feel successful, in order to feel complete?
Yes.
Right? Is that showing up for you? And if it is, notice it. Again, none of this is saying anything is right or wrong.
Yes.
Shakespeare, nothing's right or wrong, but thinking makes it so. It's really, really important that we just notice it,
Hmm.
right? And then from there, we can decide what we want to do about it,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So, how do we deal with stress? How do we deal with the pressure that's associated with just being in this world?
Hmm.
Right? That's our root. Right?
Yes. Yes.
And it's such a strong mutative force that is constantly pushing us to outgrow ourselves over
Mhm.
and over and over again.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay? So when we're in shadow, we're looking at all that stress, right? That constant activity, that ongoing noise, that pressure to just do,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So on the repressive side, this can move into contraction, right? We're not able to express ourselves, our fears, our resistance to guidance for the pressure. On the reactive side, we're looking at compulsion, right?
Mm.
This like never-ending journey, the forever long to-do list. I have to just keep
Yes.
on keeping
Yes. Yes. I'm going to take one thing off that to-do list. I'm going to add five more.
on. Yep.
Yep. Hmm.
Yep. Right. And
Oh,
if we can move that stress, that shadow aspect, and really understand how it's showing up for us, we have the ability to open to the gift, which is drive. Okay. And this is really about tapping into a harmonious state of fueled motivation for growth. So what do I mean by that? Right?
yes.
We're not moving into it because we have this need to get rid of the pressure, right? We're moving into it because there's that joyful vitality again. It's balanced. It feels correct, right? We can have that oomph to go, and we can still find stillness and restraint, right? We can know when to hit the gas pedal
Yes.
and when to hit the brake,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we're not doing it reactively to everybody around us, but we're really surrendered to that pulse of life and what's coming up for us.
We are leaning into our own energy and our own life force and how that operates.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when you think about it, right, what does that mean if we look at that as the siddhi, that enlightened state? It's really about evolution, right? It really is about evolution, but evolution in the sense of spiritual evolution, right? Like we talk about like the Kundalini Shakti, that awakening that happens, right? Because we are evolving and we're allowing that energy to flow through us as it's supposed to, right? And when it travels through the chakras, we begin to understand that we don't make it happen. We have to surrender in order for that life pulse to move through us.
Yeah. Some of us aren't good with surrender. That would be me.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not always good with surrender. Sometimes I can go there and sometimes I struggle with it, and I think that's part of the natural human experience.
I agree with you.
Right.
I should clarify that. When I am in a good space, I can actually go, okay, this is how it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to lean into that. So,
well, and then we get to lean into the rhythm, right? That energetic impulse, that rhythm in the body, not
yes.
the mind. Again, right? We're noticing how each of these have their own wisdom to bring to us, and that allows us to evolve and grow.
Yeah.
30 and 41 is black. The rest are clear. I do tend to prefer isolation. All right. So you're saying your root is undefined? Is there a channel to it?
30 to 41.
They're not root ones. I'm not sure where you're at. Hold on.
Well, yeah, it is.
Hold on.
40 and 31.
Oh, yeah. There we go. 40.
So, right there.
41 and 30. Okay. So you have the channel to your solar plexus.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And you tend to prefer isolation. Yeah, it's interesting. So what I would look at is, okay, that energy is coming to you. Do you have any other gates activated in your root, or is that the only one through that channel? Right. So what we would do, okay, so you're looking at, so you moved it, and I was like waiting for the other thing to show up, but she didn't.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet. I wanted to bring something up Kaylee put up. It's just like, we can put a puzzle together, but it is a 3D puzzle, a 100-piece puzzle. Who knows what is together? As you said, every one is a different puzzle. So
yeah. Well, yeah, and there's so many things that contribute to, where we're at. But let's look at so the 41 here is pressure of desire. So that gate itself has the shadow aspect of fantasy, the gift of anticipation, and the siddhi of emanation. And so when we look at what does that actually mean, we recognize that we can sometimes get caught up in our mind wanting things to be a certain way or imagining things to be a certain way. And until we actually, again, we're looking at that surrender piece, until we actually step back and surrender to it and notice what's possible in our current experience, then we can bring that anticipation in and start to act on things. Right? But as long as it stays in that fantasy place, it's still just up here. And there's this pressure in order to bring these desires about, but there's not that ability to act on it. Right? But because you have that connected to the solar plexus, now there's an emotional component to it, right? And
Very
so
interesting.
this is where we look at the channel, right? Because that channel is the channel of daring, right? That ability to take that risk and that ability to act on it and to bring in, these things that you want to bring into your experience. But you have to be able to move it from here, right? From just this place of fantasy, just this place of having it in the mind,
Okay.
to really looking at, okay, universe, now what are we going to do with this?
Mm-hmm. So interesting. Yeah. How many combinations are there? I mean,
Well,
I'm like going, there are this many combinations. It's like, it's crazy. Oh, do you see the look that she just gave me? She's like, Gerald, what? It's like a ridiculous question. So, oh my.
well,
Oh,
I mean, if okay, there's 64 gates,
don't ask me to do math.
right? And each of the gates is connected to at least one other center,
Hmm. So
right?
a lot.
So we're looking at 32 channels, right? But then there's a couple that are actually connected to more than just one gate, right?
Yes.
So
All right. So Michelle said, I get the solar plexus connection to my root.
Mhm.
I was an ultra marathon runner and love the temporary isolation, former abusive home. Running equals therapy.
Mhm.
28 to 38 have half a red line starting at 28.
Okay, so that means that you just have the gates activated there, right? So again, 38 is the pressure to find purpose, right?
Mm,
So how does that show up for you,
mhm.
right? And we move from the shadow of struggle to the gift of perseverance and the siddhi of honor, right? And so this is really the energy of the fighter. And looking at your experience, right? That fighter has been with you,
Yes, very
right?
true.
And knowing that that ability to persevere is what brings you through that struggle,
Yes.
right? And there are moments where you can really tap into honor and what that means for you specifically in your experience. And so
Mhm.
that pressure to find purpose, when we hit that place of honor, we recognize that the fight isn't even personal, right? And we can move away from that need to be fighting on that personal level, because now that perseverance is really about the collective kind of energy there, right? Now there's an individual knowing, that's the circuit that comes with this. And so um oh sorry, I'm looking at the 38, sorry. The 38 is that individual
Mhm.
knowing circuit. And so really being able to find that truth for yourself and what that looks like. But then with all things, we bring it outward, right? And so how do we, with all of this, whatever it is we're looking at, whether it's our centers, our gates, our channels, our design, our personal health system, all of it, it's about, how do I come to a place where I can love me with everything that I've got going on in me, right?
Mhm.
Allow space for that to unfold in new ways,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Jennifer, my inner fighter ran and jumped into athletics before going legal and setting healthy boundaries.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And noticing, how that pressure shows up for us and what it does, and what it, the way that it pushes us to different things,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. This is so, it's fascinating, it's intriguing, it's a bit overwhelming. I think about you as how you get all of this into your brain, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm like going, wow. So that's
Yeah,
incredible.
and it's interesting. We talk about, this as an experiment, and really the best way that we can understand anything is living it for ourselves,
Hmm.
right? And
Yes.
I know that there have been so many times in my life where I've been driven by stress,
Yes.
right? And I've
Mhm.
had that pressure, and I haven't allowed that pressure to energize. Instead, I've had that pressure really hold me down,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But for me, recognizing, okay, I'm an undefined root, right? And
Mhm.
so this pressure that I'm feeling isn't actually internal pressure per se, right? My stress is something that's coming from the transits and from others around me and the environment that I'm in,
Uh-huh.
right? And so I have to really be mindful of not allowing myself to be rushed or pressed into something because of the pressure that's coming from the outside,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
So again, in that moment, it's like, okay, I recognize like I'm feeling this pressure. I can actually take a step back and go, okay, where is this coming from? Why am I feeling this?
Mhm.
Right? And working on not judging myself for not necessarily acting on it.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And I think we do that a lot. This is where the shoulds come in, right? We should ourselves all the time.
We do. I should myself all of the time. It's awful.
Mhm.
It's awful. So, um, Hypnicity posted earlier
Yes.
that I sent a request for my chart a couple of weeks ago. Haven't seen it. Does it come via email, or am I being impatient?
No, it would have come via email, and if you had sent it, I would have sent it back by now. So I'm wondering if it somehow got lost
Check your spam folder.
in the yeah.
What's the email that it would come from?
For me, it would come from My Holistic Self or
Okay.
Jennifer at myholisticself.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't have it, send me another one, and I'll go through and see. Because if you put it in,
Yeah.
I would have sent it back within a day or two.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if I missed it or if it's in your spam somewhere.
Yeah. Hypnicity, follow up. So,
Hmm.
Joyful Journey said, I feel my stress as pressure in my abdomen chest. Always feels like I need to do something. It really rattles me.
Hmm. Yeah. So I would, again, are you defined or are you undefined? Because that kind of ability to allow yourself to sit with it can also be very helpful. So somebody who's undefined, there is a tendency to want to be done quickly to release the pressure,
Yes. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And if we're not able to, it's easy to become rattled. But if we can allow ourselves to recognize that the pressure is there and allow that pressure to flow without acting on it, we can actually begin to recognize what is good for us and what isn't in that way. And then we can use that pressure energy to our advantage,
Hmm.
right? But if we're in that place where it's causing us to feel rattled or fearful, really taking a step back and figuring out what's going on there, even talking to somebody
Yeah.
um, to help kind of navigate through that could be a really beneficial thing.
Hmm. Definitely. Michelle said, I agree. The replay is necessary. Thank goodness for Gerald's playlist. And yes, I'd love to have you on and discuss this more, Jennifer. Fascinating stuff.
Awesome.
And Hypnicity followed up and said, not in there. I'll redo it probably tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good.
So, um, what are some of your and any last minute words as we finish this portion of human design before we go into um, what we're
We
doing?
should probably do authorities and then do gene keys, but
Okay, we're going to do authorities and then gene keys. So stay tuned. And yes,
yeah,
anyone?
anybody can ask for a chart. Yeah, drawn to them. So I think I understand your question, but if I answer this wrong, just rephrase it for me. But there's a free chart that you can ask for on my website, and anybody can ask for it. It takes me a little bit of time to put it together. So I say 24 to 48 hours. And then you should have it. So, Hypnicity, I'm really sorry. I don't know what happened there, but that's my timeline, generally speaking, for when I can get them back, depending on how many there are at any given moment.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, and I mean, do it, Hershey. I think it would be it's very informative, and it's like, oh wow. So um and so okay, and so I did see Flower Beauty Peacock Rainbow come in. Good to see you. Ness
Mhm.
said love Gene Key 1 through 8 and 2 through 14 explained more.
Okay. You want
So
those channels explained.
yes. And
Mhm.
I think we'll have to do that next time. And Hershey did say you answered my question. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
So, but yeah.
Mhm. Cool. It's
So,
a lot. It is a lot, and this is why, when we do readings and things like that, I think sometimes people go into it and they're like, "Okay, just give it all to me," and it's like,
yeah,
no, let's pick something that, you're interested in or something that you wanna learn more about, and we can dive into what that looks like, how that shows up for you, and that kind of thing. So I think that, for this, even just taking some time to go back through the videos with your chart,
yeah,
notice what, comes up for you, maybe take some notes on the part that's relevant for you if something's defined, undefined, open, that kind of thing.
yeah,
And then, look at and go, okay, what can I explore here?
yeah.
Right? What can I experiment with? Um,
I have teased a friend of mine about getting this book, and he and I might be able to go through it together, sort of looking at it and just like,
mhm.
hmm, it would be very interesting to see what that looks like,
Mhm.
and to share that space with somebody who's also curious. So
Yeah. Yeah, and to notice it too, and it's really interesting as you get into this more, being able to do that with somebody who knows you well, because there's certain things that'll show up and you'll go, "Oh, yeah, that's me," and then there's other things where somebody will go, "Well, actually, you do this," and you go, "Do I?" Right? And that's more of
yeah,
that unconscious side, right?
uh-huh.
That design side where we're not really conscious of what we're doing or how we're showing up. So,
Mhm.
it's
Laura says, "Don't give it all away for free." She's not.
Thank you, Laura. I enjoy having these conversations and talking with all of you and having this, chat with Gerald. So that part for me is fun, and that invitation was well received. But yeah, even the free guide, it's going to tell you about. I may as well tell you what's in it. So it tells you about your aura type,
Mhm,
and then it will tell you a little bit about your authority.
mhm.
It'll tell you a little bit about um, your profile and what that means, which we haven't even talked about the lines for that. Um, and then sometimes, if I have a ton of them, I don't always include the incarnation cross, but I will include the incarnation cross, which is just a very brief write up of what that's all about.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then and then there's just a section that says so much more to explore, because we
Yes.
don't talk about the centers, we don't talk about the gates, we don't talk about the
Yep,
channels.
yep,
None of that is in there. None of your personal health system stuff is in there.
yeah,
So there's a lot left still to explore.
yeah. This is so wonderful. Thank you. I do appreciate it. And we do have another one scheduled in 1, 2, 3 weeks. And I think we're going to do authorities. Is that correct?
I think that would be a good one. I don't know. You guys can tell me. You want to do authorities? Do you want to jump into gene keys?
We'll
But I
do
think
authorities.
I think
Authorities.
authorities are
Yeah.
best because they're a really important piece of your decision making and how you navigate in the world.
Yes.
And then from there, if we want to dive into all the transits and gates and all that kind of stuff, that's going to be A lot better, because you're going to know how to go, yeah, this feels correct for me, or no, this doesn't feel correct for me.
I love that. I love that. So, and Linda Day Gonzalez is here. Hi, Linda.
Hello, hello.
You may have one of my keys.
Okay. I'm sure we have some similarities if we're in here together,
Yeah,
right?
lots of love for you. So what do you have coming up?
There's Twillo Talk at 5 today
Yes.
with Tanis, and I think we have Ramsey on with us
Oh, nice. Okay.
today, so that'll be super cool. Yeah, and I think that's it for the moment. Yeah.
Well, and the Twillo Talk Live is consistently on Mondays.
Every Monday at 5 o'clock, authentic spiritual conversation.
Yes.
So we talk about the transits. So if you're interested in what kind of energy is coming in from the human design perspective,
Mm-hmm.
or the Gene Keys perspective, then we do a brief overview of that. Tanis will share a bit about what's going on with the energies, looking at the solar flares that are coming in, or looking at the Schumann to see kind of where we're at. Yeah, and then we sometimes we had been pulling a card and talking about that every week. Lately, the energies have been so much, and they've resonated with people on such a deep level, that we end up really just talking about what it is to be in that energy and how it shows up
Yes.
for us and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And really just hold that space for community, for us all to go through it together.
Well, and it does what it says on the tin. It's a safe, authentic conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. So, please do me the favor and like and subscribe to both of our channels. All of the links to Jen's website are below in the description. It may be a good idea that you have your mini guide done, because then you can ask some questions about it. So, but you'll probably get a whole bunch of them, and my apologies.
Like I said, just give me time to put them together and get them back out to you.
Yeah.
And Hypnicity, you're first on my list.
There you go. All right. All right. Thank you so very much. I love talking with you. You're so intelligent, and you explain things in a way I can understand them, and I appreciate that. So
I try to not be as technical, and all, and I appreciate, when people are, and I know I can geek out on stuff, but this is all about, living your best you and what that means for you. And so if
yes.
we can in any way, help with that, or help, guide in that way, then I'm happy, and I feel like the task has been accomplished.
Yes. Well, and maybe Jen will be okay with me, because and want to continue conversation, because I just did but purchase this book, which came up from a conversation that you had, and yes, I knew my limits and I purchased responsibly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
but
well, we could definitely get into the healing power of the vagus nerve if you want. We can do some exercises, bring in some of those somatics, and
listen to that.
really work on calming that nervous system down.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? All right. We will say farewell, and everyone take care. Thank you.